What the I cannot believe what I read on Twitter today. I just about fell over backwards. But before we get to that, we got a little bit of info of what's coming this week. So this week, May the 4th, winners are announced. This was for a previous contest that was going on for AQ3D. Winners will be announced this week. Quest for the forgotten Azurcrest Lance at the bottom of the sea. This is going to be cool because I like things involving oceans and things. So it'll be pretty cool to see the map at the bottom of the sea. I really like that. Like with the not Lolosia, what the heck was the name of that? Atlantis. I liked it that, you're under the water and stuff. It's really neat. So soon we're going to have a multi-build housing feature where you're going to be able to assign a builder role for your friends and they will be able to help create the house for you. Do you suck at building houses? Because I do. So this is when you get other people to help you build your house. People who know how to build compared to some of us who suck out loud. Then you have the Summer Collection and Seashore Showdown. But here's the big one. Clarion posted on Twitter saying, I want to share some topics from the AQ3D game lead meeting I was just in today. We discussed removing scaling from future releases and the possibility of going back to rebalance and update older areas. So this is the first big one. The second big thing, we're bringing back the old intro. This is freaking awesome. Like, I am ecstatic when it comes to this because number one, this means two things. They are listening to the feedback of the community and they're reversing things that hurt the game. So they're restoring the old intro. I think that's a great idea, but the big thing is the removal of scaling. Now, again, this is something they've discussed, is the removal of scaling. This is not something written in stone, but I'm pretty sure since this has been mentioned, he knew that people are going to go nuts about this because this is something that we have been talking about for a long time. So we get a couple other responses here. This person here had asked and said, just limit scaling to seasonal events. It's not that we hate it completely. We just don't want it to remove the feeling of progression and make level pointless. Thank you. That is exactly the whole thing with scaling, is that it reduced the power we had, not to mention the lack of progression, which is something that AQ3D suffers greatly from. That's why I'm all for introducing new classes or new factions, something you can rank up because it provides that progression that we so lack in this game. This is going to be really, really cool. And Clarion confirmed and said, yep, that's the current plan. Another person mentioned, good call, 100% agree with it. Seeing low-level players going into Nulgath and Atlantis maps does ruin the sense of progression and main story, even confusing for most new players because you can just skip most of it, if not all. And that is another issue I found. It's much better for there to be level caps involving access to certain portions. So when you allow a new player to just jump right into Nulgath or just jump right into other places like Atlantis or something, you really take away that lack of the progression. So it becomes lack of progression because you remove it by allowing them to do it immediately. If it was level capped, let's say you have to be level 30 to do the Atlantis and maybe you need to be level 35 to do the Nulgath. When people get to those locations and they're going to go, I can't do this quest because I need to be level 35. What is this going to make them do? This is they're going to go back and they're going to grind so they can get to level 35 so they can do this quest. It just gives more incentive to play through the game the way it was intended, which is the way I think it should have been from day one. Another player said, will this current starter area go legacy? So the one we have right now, would it go legacy? I personally don't see that happening since there are items and things that you can obtain from that area. So I don't really know if that area would go legacy, but it's possible it would be revamped so that it's not part of the intro. Maybe, I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. Another player said, can I also request bringing Bone Cliffs back to its former form prior to the Be Many changes. Still unfair that day one farmers had it 100% easier than new players to get that done. So what he's referring to is the new area in the Be Many thing. You can go into a separate version of Bone Cliffs to farm. Well, the enemies in that new area are scaled, so it's actually harder to farm them. What they should do, since they're removing scaling anyways, is in that Be Many map, in that special Bone Cliffs map, all they would have to do is turn off scaling. This person says, locking advanced map for low-level players is also something that should be done. That is where, so instead of locking the map, you don't lock the map, you lock the quests in the map. So this is what they've done for the previous, like in Ashfall. You could go to the Ashfall map as a level 1, but you couldn't really do anything. You can't fight the enemies in there because the enemies in there are harder. They're level 15 enemies. So as a level 1, you can't defeat a level 15 enemy without help, obviously. But you couldn't even do any of the quests in Ashfall unless you were the required level. This is what they can do in all of the game. In Nulgath, they could set it to level 35, as I mentioned earlier, or the Atlantis could be locked at level 30. So you could still go to the map of Atlantis. You just couldn't do the quest in Atlantis until you get the required level. So it's incentive to level up. Please delete scaling from PvP 2. 5 level and 45 level must not be same power. So this is where I differ in my opinion regarding this, because PvP really needs to have scaling, because if you don't, it'd be a bloodbath. Mind asking what's going to happen with Blaze event and items. This is something that a lot of people have been concerned about, especially I did a video in regards to Blaze moving on, and what happens to his items? Do they become legacy? Clarion posted on Twitter and said, just to be clear, we are going to do something with the Blaze items, just not sure what yet. So that means the Blaze items are not legacy. They're not going legacy. We are going to be getting them back in the game. As to how we're going to be getting them, that's still up on debate. But it's possible we'd be getting it for summer. I do know that Blaze was hoping to do his event in the summer. This was prior to him moving on, but that was the original idea, was to do something in June or July. It's possible that we might get it during the summer event, because summer often ties in with fire stuff, which Blaze's items are fire related. You've got a lot of fire related stuff in the summer, you know, forest fires, heat waves, you name it. So who knows? That's where we might see it. Can you add unscale mode for dungeon public room? Yes. This right here, huge. This is something that I had, as soon as they came out with scaling for dungeons, in the public dungeons, but they offered an unscaled version of dungeons for private players. My suggestion, and I brought this to the devs years ago when it first came out, and I said, could you add that same feature? So when you click on a dungeon, instead of clicking on private, you click on public, but it doesn't shoot you into the dungeon. It pops up another option, which gives you the option to go into scaled or unscaled. So you could go into a public dungeon, either scaled or unscaled, just like you can in private. This way, you can do the dungeons with complete strangers in the unscaled without having to group up in a thing. This was something that I was really hoping they would do. Now with this whole unscaling hitting the game, if it will hit the game, I should say, because it's still on concept stage, but if it does hit the game, this is equally important in my eyes. I think there should be an unscaled mode for dungeon public rooms. Another player said, removing scaling is probably the best idea you guys had yet, but don't only remove it from the newer maps, remove it completely and make maps be progressive again. What do you guys think about scaling if it is removed from the game? Are you going to be glad that it's removed from the game? Love to hear your thoughts on that, and if you have not subscribed yet, please feel free to do so. You guys are awesome. I hope you have a great day and keep those swords swinging.